Greetings to each and every one of you, Aquaba, and welcome. Welcome to another round of the Mastermind here on LIB Radio, LIBTV on livinginblack.com. My name is Kedia Wadu, aka the Conscious Thruster. Weekends, I should say, Sundays, we are live here with our showcase we call the Mastermind. And it is a pleasure, absolutely a pleasure to be with bringing this with you every week on LIB Radio. This is where I get together with my colleagues and we look at what is happening in the world all around us. We look at culture, consciousness, historical perspectives, entertainment, economics, education, health, labor, law, politics, religion, family conflict, future studies, Pan-African affairs, sustainable development, all areas of human
You're
interaction and
muted.
development. Okay, let me turn myself on and turn the microphone. I should be able to be hear it, and I am up and live. So Baba Junior, you should probably do want to check your audio settings. I can't hear you. You want to
Yeah,
check your
you're
audio.
muted. I can't hear you.
I hear you. Yes, I hear you. You cannot hear me. So check your audio settings. I'm using hand signals. And I just let me double check. Yeah, I am coming through, Baba Junior. So I'm sorry about that, but it's unfortunately is a error on your side. Let me turn on my microphone. Turn on your headset. And for Africa One, thank you for letting me know you are listening. What a joy it is to have a family working together. I really do appreciate love this family working together. And Baba Junius, I let me know when you can hear me. And I see his mouth moving. And turn on your headset. I told him that. So we're live and direct. And hopefully Baba Junius will have all of that corrected. Here's a long time. For some reason, Rumble has been giving me a lot of crap. Now, I no longer can hear you. I no longer can hear you. So I'm typing in him instructions. And we're doing the best we can. And for Africa One is in the house. She says she hears us both. And I am listening to the computer output that's going to the web, and I am hearing my voice speaking in there. So, Baba Junius, uh, I see his mouth moving, but no audio coming out. So, I see your mouth moving, but no audio. I see your mouth moving, but no audio is going through the system. So we're doing the best we can. I do see a few others logging in for Africa One now. I cannot hear Baba Junius. Dwayne is in the house. He says, "Greetings, Baba. How do you feel about Brian Johnson issue?" And I see your mouth moving and no audio is coming out. So Baba Junius, we're going to get this right. And it usually takes a few minutes to settle in, and hopefully I'll hear him in my headset when he does come in. And I do need to do this, and glad I didn't do it at the beginning. I'm going to turn on a recorder here on the hard drive. So I want to say greetings to those of you just tuning in to LIB Radio. Today's date is Sunday, the 19th of July, 2026 in the Western Gregorian calendar. This corresponds to the year 6266 in the Kemetic calendar, to which we have realigned our cultural clock. Welcome to the seventh millennium. You have found your family in a peaceful place here on LIB Radio, LIB TV, and livinginblack.com. Um, and I don't know what to say, Bob Junius. I see he looks good, but I cannot hear a word he's saying. And I do see his mouth is moving. I'm going to go into some stories that I have queued up for today. And the first story I wanted to go to, of course, today is International Football Day. And that is what it takes. That is, we can appreciate that. FIFA Cup. It is, I'm a little bit late to the game of soccer, football, as most people in the world know it. And so I had to ask my friend from UK, we all know that English people, Great Britain, they are crazy about football. And he clued me in on some of the rules. Like some of the things I didn't understand with all the players all over the field, I didn't understand what offsides meant. And so he explained it to me that you can't go into the boxes at the end of the field unless you're being led by the ball. The ball leads you in. And he explained a few other things about I could never understand the timing of it. And so he says they have minutes that they add on at the end of the game. And so that was very helpful for me as well. So we're live, we're direct. I'm still doing the best I can. Papa Junius, I hear you in. Are you in the house? I heard a sound there, and I think that was his microphone clicking on. You are, can I hear you? I heard a sound. We got you.
How about now?
Yeah, you are in the house. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you very well.
All right, all right, all right. Let's get this party started. I want to say greetings
Can
to
you hear me
each and
now?
every one.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes,
All right.
man. You sound great.
Okay. All right.
So we were talking about just opening up with kind of just a little tribute to International Football Day. This is the big, big day, the Super Bowl of the world. And I can appreciate soccer, but I tell you, did not know much about the international rules of soccer until I had to get my English friend on the Zoom, and he kind of clued me in on some of the details. Are you pretty familiar with the game?
Yeah, I used to referee high school and college soccer.
Okay, so you understand what things like offsides
Right.
mean and
Yeah.
their timing of the game, etc. I
Right.
could never understand a few things like offsides. I didn't understand. I couldn't understand how many minutes the game went, and also I have a hard time realizing substituting players and double yellow cards or red cards. Man, that game has got some rules to
Well,
it.
once you familiarize yourself with it, it becomes easier. Now, international ball is slightly different because when I was reffing, they didn't add time on. You had a set time. High schools back then they were
Hmm.
playing quarters. College was playing halves, 2 45-minute halves. You didn't add time on. Offside is pretty simple. If you're on the offense, you have to be even with the last defenders when the ball is played. If the ball is kicked and you're ahead of the last defenders, you're offside. If
Hmm.
if you're in if you're in the opponent's side of the field, you can't be offside on your own side of the
Okay, all right. And let me just ask you this: did you get a chance to see the game for third place between Britain and France?
No, it was over by the time I turned it on.
Yeah, I think they set a new record, a new FIFA record for the most goals in one game. I was kind of surprised because I thought I was catching the beginning of the game. And when I tuned in, it was just going on a few minutes, and England had already scored twice.
Well, the thing is, uh, England had a lead, and then France came
Hmm.
back. And you normally in a
Hmm.
good game, in a top level game, you don't see that much scoring. If you have like a 2-1
Hmm.
or 3-2 game, that's considered top flight. When you
Hmm.
when you have these large scores, usually the competition is not that good,
Yeah,
or
well, those were some of the
there's
best
not a
teams
lot
in
of
the world.
defense being played.
Yeah, they were not playing any defense, and they were very, very aggressive on offense. And personally, well, I was pulling for France mainly because I like melanated teams, and England does have some pretty good
No,
melanin
they have quite
representation
a
on the
lot.
team.
They
Um,
England draws a lot of their players from Africa and the Caribbean, so they had a lot of melanated players. What you're gonna
hmm.
see today is Argentina has almost no melanated players. So, clearly, I'm
And
rooting
why
for
is that?
well, because
For Spain.
as you pointed out several years ago, they got rid of all their black players. I mean, their black population, mainly
That's
by
right.
using them as cannon fodder for their wars.
That's right. That's right. And also, they were living in conditions where they were highly susceptible to infectious
Right,
diseases. So a
right.
lot of them were wiped out, just as were the indigenous people of the United States or of Americas, let's say, wiped out by indigenous diseases that were Europeans' bodies were attuned into, but the native people of the Western Hemisphere could not take it. So we're rooting for Spain. Spain's a beautiful country. Have you ever had a chance to visit Spain?
No, I've only been to Europe twice, and that was just layovers,
Hmm.
Denmark and England, but they were just layovers.
Yeah, yeah. I've been to Spain, France, UK, and just layovers in Germany. But Spain was wonderful, wonderful country. Um, I was surprised to find that there was a lot of Moorish residue in the Spanish population. And of all of the countries in Europe I visited, believe it or not, the Spanish people danced with rhythm. So
Mm,
I
mm,
attribute that to a Moorish holdover when the Africans from northern Africa did inhabit the Iberian Peninsula for a number of centuries.
right, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful country, Spain. If you get a chance or anyone gets a chance out there to visit Spain, I was there for La Luna de Miel. That is a honeymoon. I was there and we had a wonderful time. The Spanish people were very, very kind to me. Believe it or not, I was a musician at the time. And in Spain, I had a top 40 hit.
Did you get paid? Did you get all your money?
Um, No. The manager I had, the guy who had kind of ushered the song into the Spanish, I had met him in France a year or so earlier. And then I got a call back a few months later. He said, "Hey man, your song has entered the top 40, Las Cuarentes Principales, and can you do some interviews?" And so I said, "Yeah, yeah, I'd be happy to do interviews." And I thought I spoke Spanish until the first interview question hit me, and they're speaking in normal terms, but I'm translating in
Yeah,
my head every word, every sentence, and
and you're
I had
going
to
real
just kind of
slow. Yep, yep.
yeah, yeah. But I was able to adjust. And after 3 weeks of being in the country, the honeymoon was over. My wife went home early at the time, and I got a chance to tour the country and perform in discos and other countries. They didn't have like sound stages like we have. I did have a keyboard with me, and I would just go into a disco. The manager would walk up to the DJ, give him a copy of the CD, and tell him who's in the house. And then I'd hear my name spoken up in La Casa Esta Noche. In the house tonight, we have the reggae star from America, Kidi Obiawadu or Kidi Obadu. And then I would go into the middle of the dance floor and they would put the song on and I would pantomime my
Mhm,
song
mhm.
on the dance floor. And it was really interesting. I was never a real good dancer, but when it came to dancing reggae, I was a pretty good dancer. And I would walk on. And actually, was it reggae? No, my album, I did have the top 40 song was a reggae song, but they also featured my album Kitty Like a Cat. And so I would pantomime for it, and it was wonderful. And then I would sign autographs afterwards. And I found out at that point, it's like one of our fantasies as a musician. You want to be in a crowd and they're all clamoring for your autograph. But I found out that I got tired of that like in the first 10 minutes or so. And I would give a signal, secret signal to my manager at the time, and he would come over and say, "Hey, we got to go to the next location, whatever,"
Right.
and he'd pull me out of there. But it was wonderful. The Spanish people, I fell in love with the Spanish population. They are beautiful people, humble. The residue of the Moors did stay in the culture, and as well as the oldest mosque in Spain is the oldest mosque in Europe is located in Spain, but the oldest cathedral is in Spain as well, and it was at Salamanca. And so I was in Salamanca, one of the oldest cities and of this transition. And the cathedral, inside the cathedral, was you saw the black Madonna and child. That was very important to them and should be very important to us as well. But there was also, they had no windows in the cathedral, and it was dark, dank, and damp. Meanwhile, the oldest Moorish temples that were there, the mosques, they were had tiled windows. It was open, airy, and everything. So you could really see this contrast between early European Christianity and the Moorish influence. The Moorish really did a lot in Europe. And of course, in 1492, the year Christopher Columbus sailed the
Yeah.
ocean blue, they threw the Moors out when they were defeated at, I think it was Gibraltar, not Gibraltar. They were defeated somewhere. I can't remember the name right now, but that was when they threw out the Moorish influence and the European influence began to dominate for
Right.
centuries
Yeah.
afterwards.
Well, they unified Isabella and her husband, Ferdinand and Isabella united, and they were able to have a military campaign. Not only did they throw out the the Moors, but they also threw out the Sephardic Jews and some of
Hmm.
the Ashkenazim Jews who they left there and then went to Holland.
Hmm.
But yes, it's an interesting story, an interesting history that we've been brainwashed to be Anglophiles, to look out for British history and to embrace that. And we don't know the true tribal history of Europe.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
basically, when you're talking about Europe with the coming of the Eurasians, you're talking about nonstop, incessant warfare, tribal
Hmm.
warfare. Then when they formed the nation states, they continued that. Then when they had the so-called age of exploration, they took that warfare, plunder, and predation all over the world.
That's right. That's right. And the Moorish influence on Africa was, oh, not Africa, a Moorish influence on Southern Europe, especially going through the Iberian Peninsula, was very profound. Architecture was
Yep.
profoundly influenced, as well as mathematics and other influences that had to deal more with the mind, with intellectual development, cultural development, as opposed to perfecting the uh, nasty, brutish art of war.
Well, not only, but they also brought a system of hygiene, a whole
Hmm.
outlet of how to present yourself, clothing that sparked a a a spike in interest
Hmm.
because the Arabs and the Africans brought a whole different cultural dynamic with them. Again, it wasn't
Hmm.
just merely conquest. Yes, they did conquer, but they brought a higher standard of living. They brought more practical ethics and morality than what the Europeans had.
That's right. Before the Moors really impacted, much of Europe, they had experienced, I think, at least one major episode of the Black Death, which swept across Europe, estimated to have killed millions and millions of people.
In fact, there's some people who suggest it was those survivors, the European survivors of that, that enabled them to have the grit to go out and do what they did around the world.
Yeah,
So,
and that and part of that was come to the Western Hemisphere and create massive uh, disease outbreaks.
well, it wasn't just the Western. Everywhere they went, when you study the European,
Hmm.
and then the so-called age of exploration or mercantilism or early capitalism, imperialism, colonial, there's several things that happen. There's major ecological disruption. There's warfare and conflict because they didn't come in
Hmm.
peace. And then is a establishment of a caste or socioeconomic political system that always has the Europeans on top
Hmm.
and the various classes or shades of indigenous people on filling on the bottom. Very
That's right.
reminiscent to the Aryans, what they did in India and some other parts of the world.
Hmm. Okay. Let me just take a moment and say greetings to those who are in our listening audience for today. It is always a pleasure to be with you, our audience, and we do appreciate, love you. We have for Africa One checking in right at the beginning, Hotep Mastermind panel and Global LIB family Ubuntu. That is the word Ubuntu. For African, she says, I hear you both. And a couple we're joking back and forth. Now I cannot hear Baba Junius. Well, we hear him all now. Dwayne is in the house. Greetings, Babas. How are you? How do you feel about Brian Johnson issue? And if I'm correct, I believe Brian Johnson is the man who is attempting to set a new standard for human longevity. You're familiar? Have you been following Brian Johnson's research?
No, I'm not familiar with him.
Yeah, he's the guy who's spending millions of dollars a year. He's a Wall Street billionaire. And I think this is the Brian Johnson he's talking about, who's doing a lot of different things. He does a lot of the things Brian Johnson does. I do as well. And I do appreciate that, what he's doing. But some of the things he does that I don't participate in, and such as he's injecting himself with the blood from his young son, and I'm not into that kind of stuff. Brian Johnson, let me just be clear over here who Brian Johnson is. I'm not talking about somebody
Isn't he some
else.
kind of
Brian Johnson,
rock
yeah,
artist or something?
he's an American entrepreneur, venture capitalist, writer, and author, the founder and former CEO of Kernel, a company creating devices that monitor in both brain activity, and OS Fund, a venture capital fund that invests in early stage science and technology companies. And again, most of us know him from his longevity experiments on his own body. And I do know there are other people, including LeBron James. Is it LeBron James? Yeah, I think it's LeBron James, or no, it's Michael Jordan, who are also involved in longevity research as well. Um, I am deeply involved in longevity research, and my protocol, as far as I understand, my protocol for longevity is probably second only to Brian Johnson, especially my protocol costs very little money. I do not have the capital of Michael Jordan or Brian Johnson, both billionaires that are involved in extending life expectancy.
Well, there are other people like Ray Griswold from uh I think he's Google. I think he's with either Google or one of those Silicon Valley. So
Hmm.
he's into that. But again, he has a lot of money
Hmm.
and he intends he's going to be one of these people who either he's going to tend to live long or he's going to go with some of the other folks to Mars. That's what they.
Yeah, and I do know Peter Diamandis, who wrote the book Bold and another book. What was the other book? It was a great book. Both of his books we reported on extensively here on LIB Radio. Peter Diamandis is also funding a lot of longevity research. I've tried in the past to get a hold of some of these people to share what I do, but they don't really respond. I think it's because I'm not of the billionaire class.
Right. And basically a lot of them, if they can't glean some kind of advantage from interacting with you, they don't.
Yeah. But my longevity protocol, according to Perplexity's uh, AI, in examining all of the things that I do towards longevity, and I do a long list of things, it added up all of the years I'm gaining, and it tells me that I should expect to live to be a total of 124 years of age, but I will get to 118 and then there'll be a swift drop off. But 118, that's not bad at all.
Yeah, that's major,
Hmm.
particularly when you consider what has happened the last 20 years or so with all these uh, the ecocide and the poisons and the deliberate genocide of the global population, particularly with this COVID stuff.
Yeah, the COVID stuff really hurt a lot of people, and it actually set back longevity in the United States by up to 3 years among different populations. Let me finish saying greetings. Stop the Madness is in the house. And Guvu's checking in. He says, "Oh, stop the Mazda says I am in class with five exclamation points." And Guvu, Sawabona, peace and blessings to all. Queen Mother Kashiba is checking in. Hotep family, Brother Dwayne is checking in. It says he's sick now. I didn't know that about um, Brian Johnson. He's sick now. He's got stomach issues. He has an autoimmune disease. I was thinking about the things he's doing, and like I say, some of the things Brian Johnson was doing, I do not do. And just reading, Dwayne says he's got stomach issues and autoimmune disease. Forgive spelling. I'm driving. Drive, please, careful. He said, blood sounds like a vampire. Stop the Madness says, blood sounds like a vampire. And that's one of the things rich people do. They engage in vampire like activities, drawing blood from lesser, younger people.
Most of them are children,
That's right. That's right.
but
And
a lot of that is not in addition to health. They're engaged in these demonic rituals.
hmm
So that's more of a priority than health because they think they're gonna live forever through their ritual.
yeah, and they're also uh, transplanting organs from
Oh,
younger
yeah.
people
Oh, yeah.
into their body. And that's a very, very serious thing. So I'm looking up Brian Johnson in the news. Longevity guru Brian Johnson reveals autoimmune gastritis diagnosis. So that autoimmune gastritis. Now, Brian Johnson looks very young. His looks are converging with that of his son, from which he's been borrowing the blood. And but if he's ill, if he's sick, I don't think we do want to follow him. Hey, follow my protocol if you can. Now, Baba Junius, on August the 1st, I've just completed our summer solstice detox fast. On August the 1st, I'm teaching another class on longevity, rejuvenation, the reboot, detox, stem cell, and it's focusing on anti-aging strategies. Now, if someone else out there wants to perhaps live, everyone, I should say, should want to live beyond 100 plus years. Longevity science has advanced quite a bit, and with early childhood deaths now so small, The longevity now is extending, but I say if people want to live firmly beyond 110 years, you have to start to craft that lifestyle while you are in your late 20s or early 30s.
Well, the thing that's going in a concurrent stream is that the life expectancy in America is declining. It hasn't been in
Hmm.
decline for the past several years. So that's a trend that I think we need to be aware of and then think about what we can do to offset that in terms of our health, our well-being, because we know that there's a major program for global depopulation. All
Hmm.
this will include what we're seeing now with these wars and the economic fallout from these wars, the food shortages that are going to be coming, and the economic collapse and the stress and strains that are going to have a major impact on people's well-being, psychological well-being, as well as their physical well-being. So everything that you're talking about and the things that we need to do in terms of maybe begin to grow our own food, be more conscious of our environment, and do what we have to do to sustain our well-being should be a priority.
Hmm. Yeah, should definitely be a priority. And the life expectancy in most Western countries is still expanding, but in the United States, because we have this new brutality in place because of the will of the dominating class. The new brutality are culling people. They use COVID to cull a major portion of the population and their competitors in business, etc. And the stress of losing a business, of being run out of business, etc. That stress leads to early termination of life. There's a lot of things that go into longevity. I contend the longevity is not necessarily expensive if you're willing to make the right commitments, such as I do my push-ups. Then push-ups are one of are three of about 8 sets of exercises that I do throughout the day. It's an amazing exercise routine. I went to the gym this morning. They have a gym in the building where I'm at, and I put in a good deal of work. There's a lot of input into it. The vegan diet, I contend the vegan diet is the optimal diet for longevity, and that's been confirmed in a number of places. I think that we all should have some protocol for extending our life expectancy. Our hormonal integrity is very, very important to that. But I dare say, do not do what Brian Johnson and these other billionaires are doing. That's not for us.
Well, there's a spectrum or a culture of longevity and well-being. And one of the things that
Hmm.
we need to remember, meaning to re-embrace and reinvigorate and reapply to our lives, is the quality of our social connections. Because African
That's right.
people, we are gregarious, we're social people. And as we look at the
Hmm.
decline in our social activities, the decline in our psychological and emotional states, whether it's collectively in our families or personally, these are some of the adverse effects on our health and well-being because
That's
we
right.
live in a society that is literally crazy.
And when we look inside of this crazy society, for the longest living Americans, they happen to be Seventh day Adventists. And when we're looking closer at the Seventh day
Yeah,
Adventist
as a
community,
group.
we
Yeah,
see
as a group. Yeah. Mhm.
when we look at them as a group, there are two things that are pretty consistent. Number one, they're mostly vegetarian. And number two, Seventh day Adventists have a close knit, very supportive network, social
Right.
network.
Mhm.
One of the things common in the blue zones around the world, the book by Dan Buettner, the blue zones learn the lessons of living longer by the people who have lived the longest. We understand that strong social community is very, very important. eating fresh organic food and producing your food is very important, and eating most of your proteins will be vegetable based or grain based protein. That's very consistent within the blue zones. They eat very small portions of meat, if not, and we can therefore break them down. I love the book, The Blue Zones by Dan Butner. A person, please do get the book and read the book and hopefully put together your own program for longevity. Longevity is a
Well,
blessing.
yeah, but the thing is, one of the common factors is whether you're looking at uh, the Seventh Day Adventists, whether you're looking at the Blue Zone uh, populations around the world, they have, in addition to their food, they have a pretty homogeneous mix, social mix,
Hmm. Hmm.
and so they have a structure, a pattern, a lifestyle, a value system that they all embrace, and that their being together reinforces. And that's
Hmm.
what we have to get back to, because once we left the South with the migration, and I understand why that happened. They were looking for
Hmm.
relief from oppressive racial privation and terrorism and better economic opportunities.
Hmm.
Being away from the land, being away from family, because we tended to be close to family, close knit communities, and what have you. As this society collapses, and this is not an organic collapse, it's a deliberate, planned collapse
Hmm.
on all levels. And because we're not aware of it, because we're not using game theory to see how this is impacting us and who the players are, we are collateral damage. And unfortunately, until we begin to embrace those common practices and themes of the groups that you just mentioned, we're going to move closer and closer to fade to black.
That's right. And fade to black has us all fading out. A few will last longer than others, but the fade to black is an Ubuntu fate. We're all in this, we're all in this together. And we can defeat fade to black. It will be, I suggest, Ubuntu, what we call the Ubuntu equilibrium, will be our vehicle of collaboration, cooperation to make sure if any of us suffer, all of us suffer, but let's say any of us can succeed, we must all be able to succeed. This is why I teach the classes. It's I do make money off the classes and I need that money to live off of. But the bottom line becomes you don't necessarily have to pay me. Add some value to our lives, and I'll include you into the classes. Unfortunately, we habitually have been tricked out of contributing to our mutual survival.
Well, that's part and parcel of
We
being
are.
in this situation, in this culture where we don't have confidence in ourselves. We hate
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. We don't trust ourselves. And so we turn to, it's the Stockholm syndrome.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. I see a couple more comments have come in, and there is a comment from Stop the Madness. He talked about blood sounds like vampire. And Dwayne writes, people are afraid to eat fruits and vegetables now due to parasites. And that's a news story that just comes up today. They're being told do not use iceberg lettuce or shredded
Right, right.
lettuce because of parasites from animal manure used as fertilizer in it. Personally, I think it might be these alerts might be fraudulent.
Fear porn.
They'll overblow them. Fear porn. There you go. You got it. Fear porn. And I think they're overblown to a great extent. Um, if you just wash your vegetables to the best of your abilities and keep your immune system strong, you will be okay. Most cases. I'm not hearing about anybody being killed from eating lettuce. And those people who are maybe dying from it, they were probably suffering from comorbidities anyways. I do see Queen Mother Kashiba is in the house. She writes, the Seventh day Adventists helped me to stop smoking over 40 years ago. Bless them. And that was probably one of the best decisions you could possibly have made for your longevity, Queen Mother Kashiba. We celebrate your longevity, and I wish upon you 100 plus years of a beautiful life expectancy. That is the name of one of my books, Robert Junius, 100 plus longevity, and it talks about specific strategies to extend healthy lifespan. And in it, I list all of the inflammatory diseases, including 70 different autoimmune diseases, as well as I list all of the herbs, the foods, and everything. And I do cite my 52 supplements that I use as an anti aging supplementation.
Look at the market, look at the general market, and then ask yourself, is nutrition, is longevity, is health, is well-being in the marketplace? Is it promoted vigorously in the marketplace versus
Hmm.
pharmaceuticals, versus these menus and diets that they show you in the commercials that have no green stuff in them or very little green stuff in them, in the pictures, the
Hmm.
optics. Look at what's happening in education, where when we came through, at least they talked about the food groups, they talked about sleep, they talked about water, hydration, et cetera, et cetera. They don't talk about that anymore. I had a conversation with Dick Gregory one time. He said, if we could eliminate 3 conditions that a lot of us suffer from, we'd be in good health. If we sleep deprivation, dehydration, and poor nutrition, he said our health would expand exponentially. And he's absolutely correct.
That's right. That's right. And Dick Gregory himself was quite a guru for our longevity. Unfortunately, Dick Gregory's early life, as an early adult life, he poisoned himself so badly with the
Yeah,
alcohol
yeah.
and the
Cigarette.
narcotics. And Dick Gregory, yeah, he really, really hurt himself. But he did give us the best he could. I did just post up in the chat, and I am just posting up in the chat. If people want to get the book, 100 plus lifespan, I did post it up in the chat, and I do encourage each and every one of us to go ahead and pursue this. I'll put up the link to the Audible as well. For its, as you understand, nowadays not a lot of people are reading, and that's another topic for maybe another conversation, or it's an extension of this very conversation. Our literacy is very important to the idea of longevity, etc.
Well, we've been taught that African people weren't literate. That's not true. But the thing that even though the evidence that they use to propagate these lies is specious, the thing what they don't realize is that our social connectedness, because for the most part, most of our communities were relatively small. Yes, there were major centers of administration or religious centers or what have you in some of these great empires that we had. But by and large, most of the settlements were relatively small. They were
Hmm.
relatively cohesive, even if they were large. Even when you look at some of the excavations, even though we're large, you see how the family and the structure of the villages and the towns or what have you was conducive to being social and being
Hmm.
engaged with each other. And again, because we're abandoning that, we've abandoned our own people, because now we're running to try to marry other folks. Okay, you love who you love, but the fact of the matter is, we need a base. We need a social base, and that social base should supply us with the needs that we have as human beings and spiritual beings. And unfortunately, looking at the West and looking at America today, that's absent. We don't have that. We don't see that.
Hmm. That's right. And we do want to construct an ideal, optimal life for ourselves as individuals. This is hence why I put the book out called Kuchi Chagalia Villages, a practical plan for self determination. I still do contend that building Kuchi Chagalia villages, self determination villages, is a good plan for African people, but I seem to be in the
Right.
intellectual minority.
Yeah. Yeah, out in the
um,
wilderness there with that one.
yeah.
Unfortunately, see, when we talk about self-determination,
Hmm.
we don't take it to the next level because here in this country, because the ruling class sets the tone and tenor for what goes on, we never really the base level was, okay, you can be a farmer, you can feed yourself.
Hmm.
But keep in mind, the colonial model was to send your surplus back to the trading companies or the motherland or whatever. Once this became a so-called sovereign nation, everything was directed to enrich and benefit the ruling classes. Yes, you could keep some of it, early on if you were a farmer or you were a tradesperson or whatever. But as time went on, they structured society so that you would have industry that benefited them. You would have commerce that benefited them. So now you look at the situation between a mega agriculture or agribusiness versus the family farm.
Hmm.
Look at uh, occupations that are no longer in need, because of mechanism and robotics and now emerging AI. And so our lifestyles and our very lives have been hijacked by these ruling class people in the societies that they've set up. So
Hmm.
our actual life purpose, why we were put here, why the creator deemed it good to infuse us with those talents and gifts that we have, a lot of times they're being misdirected or suppressed.
Hmm. Yeah. And they're being at, gamed out of
Yeah,
societal impact.
right.
It's a zero sum game that they're playing, meaning I win at your
Dude.
expense.
Right, right.
And the sophistication by which this game has been set up goes way beyond what we're commonly thinking about, talking about, and strategizing to compete against in across society. In From my opinion, Africans across much of the diaspora are merely attempting to replicate or imitate the European lifestyle
Mhm.
because we act as if we want to build for ourselves what they have built for themselves. But if you actually examine the strategies and things that are going up, we just want to be included in what they have built for themselves and their children.
Right.
And
We're
and
more into assimilation than we are into individuation.
hmm.
Individuation is not individualism. Individuation is you developing your own gifts and talents
That's right.
for your self-interest. Assimilation, we wanna fit in, we the delusion of inclusion, the illusion of inclusion, but it's always at their beck. It's always at their priorities. It's never the priority for ourselves. And so, if we were in our right minds, as Amos Wilson and Malcolm would say, our vision of ourselves would be entirely different. I'm not saying we wouldn't have industry because we had industry, we had
Hmm.
technology. I'm not saying we wouldn't have technology. We bought into this primitive stuff that we were backward. No, we were fundamental. We used what nature provided, and we used it quite efficiently, and never took too much, took just enough, and you reinvested back into nature, not into the banking system or this phony economic system that they have that is about to crash.
Mm.
So part of our drive and push to self-determination is we have to re-envision, reimagine ourselves, and then look at, go back and fetch and look at what drove these great societies that we produce all over the world, whether it was Mohenjo-Daro, whether it was the Nile Valley, whether it was throughout Africa, or even here over here with the Olmecs, the Aztecs, the Incas. What drove them, or the people, kingdoms in the islands, the Hawaiians, all those people had massive social organization that benefited the people. That whole summum bonum, Ubuntu, that is missing when you look at the Western way of doing things.
Hmm. You're
Other than
absolutely right.
they just use us for labor, and all their organization is to exploit the land, exploit the labor, and to enrich the few people at the top.
That's right. That's so very true. We ask each and every one of you in our listening audience, please do hit the like button for today on your viewing browser. I was able to, with the help of our listeners, and I got to say, my sister Shingai for Africa One, she's very, very helpful, and she helped me to deal with the quality of the broadcast. I didn't realize, Baba Junior said, during the weekdays, I was broadcasting to a second channel, and there was the LIB radio rumble, and then there was the Kidi Awadu rumble. I started broadcasting the Kidi Awadu, and then people were saying the numbers were very, very low, and people were saying, "Hey, we can't find you." And so she helped me out to clarify that. We have our biggest audience of the week is on Sundays. So if you can, please hit the like button. It would be very helpful to us if you just tell the algorithms that you do appreciate LIB Radio. And, LIB Radio definitely appreciate, loves you as well. Um, Going forward, looking at other stories around the world, I did pull up um, Africa. I'm in, where is it at? It's over here. Too many windows, too few fingers. The problems on the African continent still continue. Top headline: Sudan, the world stopped watching. And we're not going to do that here, but Sudan is such a terrible tragedy. We can understand how people just want to disconnect from it, tired of hearing nothing but suffering coming from the people of Sudan.
Well, one thing, they suppress the information. The narrative we get is the same old, this constant conflict. They don't realize that there are factors and actors at work keeping that situation in a state of flux, keeping that situation volatile, and
Mhm.
uh, undermining real peace efforts. So going back, even that's how come that's why the nation was split. Africa, Sudan was one of the largest nations on the continent. It was split.
Mhm.
That wasn't one of the goals. When you go back and look, even dig into some of the underground type reporting, they were just talking about power sharing with the people in the South, power sharing with Khartoum. They tried to
Mhm.
just to solve the war issue. All of a sudden, the plane goes down. The president and some of his advisors are killed. next thing you know, they're talking about bifurcation. And,
Hmm.
you have to figure out who's behind that. Why did that happen? And I maintain it's the usual suspects. Talking
Right.
about Africa, just on allafrica.com, U.S. Congress cuts aid to Nigeria 50%. The vote was 217 to 209 over allegations of Nigerians failing to protect Christians. So Trump was able to push that through. The other key thing is Somalia. The United States has bombed Somalia for the 75th time. Most people, when we talk about Sudan, we're not talking about the war of the United States against Somalia. So, in addition to them bombing Somalia, the Somalia resistance group Al Shabaab is now collaborating with the Houthis to disrupt traffic through the Bab al Mandab Strait, and they're uniting. They're part of the axis of resistance, and Iran is now supplying drone technology to Al Shabaab. This is important because the war is expanding, and you also have the Zionists, the Israelis, recognizing Somaliland, and you have to ask yourself, what impact will that have on what is going on here, and also with the situation in the Red Sea? So we need to keep an eye on that, and that's about it for the pieces I picked up on Africa about Africa for this week.
Hmm. There was another story. I'm looking at the London Independent. Independent. 9 African countries are set to see their UK bilateral aid cut by more than 80%. After the government laid out the full breakdown, it's planned to reduce the aid budget from 0.5% to 0.3% of gross national income through to 2029. As they're cutting aid to Ghana, Kenya, Malawi, Tanzania, and Mozambique. And now, when we and Tanzania, Kenya set to see UKA foreign aid cut by 93%, Tanzania by 91%, Mozambique by 90%, Malawi by 90%, and Zambia by 88%. When we consider the wealth of the UK, there's no doubt that much of that wealth was built from these countries. And while I do subscribe to the idea that was put forward by, what was her name? She wrote a book. She was formerly a member of the World Bank, and she wrote a book that said Africa needs trade, not aid. Uh, Moisa, no, not that wasn't her name. Malika Dicambo, something like that. Sounds like that. But I do agree Africa needs trade, not aid. But the fact that the British would just unilaterally cut aid by so much to so many African countries means something else is going on with Britain and these other countries. And personally, I have I'm not necessarily going to complain that that aid is being cut off from the U.S. cut its USAID budget to African countries. Now
Mhm.
the UK is following.
Well, I'm not. It's going to be a shock. I'm hoping that the African leadership can adapt and adopt different policies, because, like the
Hmm.
sister was saying, and I didn't read her book, but I'm extrapolating. A lot of this aid cultivates dependency, and it's also cultivated corruption. We've seen that happen time and time and time again. And so maybe this will force the African leadership to come up with inno- indigenous innovation so that they can solve their own problems and not have to depend on the outsiders, or the outsiders that they depend on will be more willing to have two-way bilateral agreements. Looking at the Chinese, I know a lot of our listeners and viewers over the years have been critical of Africans who went into arrangements with the Chinese. I maintain that as long as they're mutually beneficial and they're not totally lopsided, I would encourage that. I would encourage African nations, for example, getting into arrange with the Vietnamese, or maybe uh, some of the other s- um, southern hemispheric leaders and countries, so that we just cut our dependency from the Europeans, from the former colonizers, the settlers, the brutalizers. Because
Hmm.
when we look at it, for the most part, they're not altruistic. They're not humanitarian. Their main goal is to turn a profit for their corporations or for the government to get something out of it, whether it's strategic geostrategic alignment, advantages, what have you, or just, again, like the IMF and the World Bank, to get people in debt, or USAID, which was used as a conduit for intrigue from the CIA. So the
Hmm.
truth of the matter is they really didn't help, because most of the money didn't filter down to programs that benefited the vast majority of the people anyway.
That's right. Good points you make. And I did find the name of the author, that is Dambisa Moyo, Baroness Moyo, from Zambian born economist. She worked for macroeconomics. She worked for the World Bank, I think it was, or the IMF, one of the two. She's written a number of books called, one of her bestsellers, Dead Aid: Why Aid is Not Working and How There is a Better Way for Africa. And that was where that dialogue of Africa needs trade, not aid, which was picked up by the president of Uganda, Museveni, picked that up. Yoweri Museveni picked that up and amplified it. So Dambisa Moyo, I never really appreciated Dambisa Moyo because she, born in Africa, she seemed to give so much loyalty to the West and to European Union companies, countries, etc. But at the same time, we can appreciate a fundamental truth that Africa needs to back away from dependence on British aid, USAID, French aid, and et cetera, European Union aid. And Africa needs to develop its own resources. It has $30 trillion in untapped natural resources moving into the 21st century. In the book, um, the new book, Game Theory, we talk about Africa's dominance. The Democratic Republic of the Congo controls 70% of the cobalt mining resources in the world. Africa is very rich in platinum metal groups. Zimbabwe and South Africa control 90% of the world's platinum metal groups, very necessary. Manganese, very necessary for the green economy. So Africa is at a stage that can leverage its access to these resources, but they're going to need help from the outside. We, the African diaspora, all right, we have $1.5 trillion in income. That's not even to talk about what we spend. With that amount of income, we could set up the smelting factories inside of Africa to turn the raw resources into smelted products, and ultimately set up the factories to manufacture consumer goods out of those now refined metals.
Well, we also could encourage them to interact throughout the diaspora and also in southern hemispheric progressive nations to build up their infrastructure. One of the reasons the West killed Gaddafi was because he was proposing those very same things.
That's right.
One of the reasons that they have tried to undermine the impact and influence of China and even Russia to some degree on the continent is because they know that they offer opportunities and deals and contracts and business arrangements that are contrary to what the West is, which is mostly one-sided and very exploitative. So our uh,
Mm,
interaction with our brethren on the continent and throughout the diaspora is to just become less dependent upon the European because they're not genuine. It's not altruism. It's all about exploitation. And again, I believe that using our indigenous wisdom as well as our resources, not so much to mimic the West in terms of their industry and their um, commerce, but to develop the continent using its resources, leveraging the resources so they can build a different and unique culture and society on the continent. I'm not saying go back to living
mm-hmm,
in dung huts, but I am saying use the engineering uh, acumen that you develop either on your own or through partnering, going to China or some of these other, or even some of the Western companies, but just come back within your right mind. Because see what we see here in this country, we brag about education, we brag about people who have advanced degrees, but when you look at it, it's basically indoctrination. We've been indoctrinated. We've been trained, yes, but we've primarily been indoctrinated away from ourselves, not to think collectively, not to think in terms, not even to think in terms of how to use the technology in a meaningful way that benefits humanity. Because when you look at what's going on now, what these boys are trying to do with these data centers, with the surveillance, the digital IDs, the digital monetary system, all of that's all about Big Brother, Brave New World on steroids. That
mm.
even if Huxley and Orwell were alive today, they'd be shocked at the way this stuff is going.
Yeah, yeah, I do agree. Um, we're talking about cutting aid a little bit earlier. I see another article from All Africa. The U.S. House of Representatives has passed a spending bill containing a provision to cut aid to
Yeah, I just said
Nigeria.
that. Yeah, I just said
Oh,
that.
okay. Oh, okay. The allegations of violence against Christians and other vulnerable communities. And of course, that is more of that warped and twisted mindset coming from the chief executive of this country.
Yeah, that is his attack on Nigeria, claiming that they're allowing the terrorists to attack Christians. So his minions in the Congress, and the vote was probably along party lines. The vote was 2017 I mean 217 to 209. So
Hmm.
probably along party lines. But
That's right.
that's what they're doing. I mean, this and unfortunately, we look to the government. We've been so traumatized that we think the government is the only solution, when in fact, our history should tell us. And even when they had good intentions, they didn't last. What happened to Reconstruction? They sold us out.
Hmm.
Uh, look at what they're trying to do now, and what I've long been calling the second Reconstruction, where we have
Hmm.
more appointed and elected officials now than any time we've had in this the history of this country. And then we have to ask ourselves, are we in better shape? Has this increase in participation benefited us as a people from top to bottom? And if you're honest, you have to say no.
Hmm. All right. And just 1 second here in the background, have to reconfigure the second computer because the computer crashed and was no longer broadcasting in the background. So, yeah, we take 2 steps forward and then 1 step to the side and then 1 step backward. Then we go to consider
Spin around, do
stepping
si
again.
do.
We're doing the best we can, and uh, I'm not even going to talk about the source of all of this, all of these problems logging in. We had a lot of problems logging in today. I mean, we do the same thing over and over again, but there's something that's creeping in that may be tweaking our computers in the background. We don't know. We can only speculate.
Well, all the computers, all the devices have backdoor channels.
Mm-hmm.
They were remember after 9/11 when it was exposed, then the Congress went back and retroactively passed laws to allow to permit that. But I see, Snowden and what's the other guy who exposed what was going on?
Greenwald, was it?
No, the guy who went to, I think he went to he left and went to Europe.
Uh-huh. There was the older white-haired guy. I know who you're talking about,
Well,
but I can't think of his name
at
right
any
now.
rate, we've seen
Mhm.
with the what was the Twitter files. We've seen all of that, how we've been monitored, how they're using the technology to track and trace us. You look at what's happening now with these flock cameras, how people are attacking them. People are attacking the data centers on environmental issues, which is important, critically important, but they also should attack them on Big Brother.
Mhm.
It's all part and parcel of the flock cameras, the drones, the sat. Look at how they're uh, promoting. Was it Skylink? They're trying to make it like, oh, this is going to be so convenient for this, and you can really. It's about them tracking you everywhere you go, more so than they do even now, and all that
Mhm.
linked into these data centers, and they'll be able to keep track of us in real time all the time, just like they
Mhm.
do in China.
And the
That's
data, the money for the data centers is a huge, huge budget for AI um, data centers. AI has never really made a profit,
right, right. And
and
that's
so
what they're existing. That's what they're experiencing now. Go
mhm.
to the our listeners and viewers, go to the financial pages
Mhm.
and see the problems that these AI backers, these venture capitalists, or the people who are pushing AI on the financial stage are having. They're not
Mhm.
turning a profit. They're losing there's a major loss in confidence behind that.
Mhm.
So you have this on the grassroots level, people fighting against the data centers, but on the top level in the boardrooms, people and eventually the stockholders and shareholders are going to start fighting because they're not getting a profit.
Well, therein lies a major challenge because the shareholders and the stock holders are not necessarily all down with the conspiracy, the deep state conspiracy. Um, Someone used the term dark enlightenment the other day, and I did a program talking about the dark enlightenment and the deep state. And it's two distinct ideas there. And I think it does serve us all to best pay attention to it. But not all of the billionaire class are in on it. Some of them still want to make money, while others, such as the founders and the leaders of the AI, including Sam Altman, Larry Ellison, and
Theo, yeah.
Peter Thiel, and
Mhm.
these others, they are looking for something they consider supreme to the idea of AI convenience. They want to recreate God. I wrote the book, AI Has a God Complex. Little did I know that I would keep researching this and find out that statement had far more substance to it than just a throwaway book title. AI does have a God complex because the owners or the founders of AI and the promoters of AI, they wanted to create a God.
Mhm.
And when you look at the omnipresence, the omnipotence of AI, it appears to be they're setting it up to be God. It's gone too far. Humans are still in a position to be able to turn it off, but most people really are more concerned about keeping their paychecks and other things, other concerns about AI, rather than is this being promoted as a new God?
Well, the fact of the matter is, the people shouldn't grasp the significance of dark enlightenment because of the
Hmm.
mindset where they're talking about basically getting back to monarchies or this techno feudal type of arrangement. And it does not bode well for humanity because part and parcel to these other groups, and that's why it's so important to keep getting back to game theory and understanding who these players are. Some of these people are deep and deeply rooted in eugenics, population control. In fact, population control is one of the planks of the New World Order.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
then when you look at that, then you look at the Great Reset, where they're talking about, of course, they couch it in altruistic and humanitarian terms, but when you look behind it and you start asking questions, you see it's really about control, a reconfiguration of the new order. Now, some of the old world order people are still going to be involved in it because they have money and they have a vested interest in it. But there's a whole nother group, the Gateses, the people that you just named, and some of these other folks who are now bogarting in, and they want to be some of the movers and shakers in this new system. And we're going merrily along, worrying about gas prices and food prices. They don't realize that part of the enslavement is that once they call the population, they get it down to a certain level, they're going to have what they call guaranteed basic income or universal basic income, where you're going to get money. So you don't even have to quote unquote worry about that because they're going to make it so you're a total slave. Of course, it's going to be tied to
Mm.
your compliance. So if you don't comply, then you won't get your digital credits in your account. You won't be able to all of a sudden everything will be
Hmm.
shut off immediately. And until you get the message and you get back on and, oh, master, I'm sorry. Then they bow down to the great AI surveillance system and get back online. Although, given human ingenuity, there's going to be some kind of quote unquote black market or gray market out
Hmm.
there that people can circumvent that. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But I just don't want them to impose this system because I really don't want to find out.
Yeah.
Yeah, you froze up there a little bit. You're frozen.
Mm. Yeah. My reboot computer, I had to reboot my computer in the background, and it's still acting a fool. And I don't know if you can hear
Yeah, I
me.
hear you. You
Go
sound
back.
techno.
And yeah, someone had sent in a question, and in attempting to answer the question, had to use a search engine, and it grabbed all of my resources, and now my uh, Chrome appears to be failing. And so let me see if I can get that question. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. Um, the question comes from uh, King Jason, the snotball. He says, expect Somaliland to have a future conflict with Yemen's Houthis. Israel, if Israel is successful, they are very expert at creating divide and conquer strategies. And I do definitely agree with that. They are operating in southern Africa. I contend that much of this xenophobia is being fomented because of Mossad impact there. I may be off on a tangent, but I think we've discussed that before, haven't we?
Well, he's absolutely right. Israel was one of the few and first countries to recognize Somaliland, and they have
Hmm.
signed accords for cooperation. So, given the Houthis and given Somalia working in conjunction with Iran against Israel and the United States and their lackeys, it makes sense. He's really reading the tea leaves, and that's all part of game theory. He's reading the tea leaves. I expect any time that something to break out there, not only
Hmm.
in Somaliland, but because remember, Somalia has other factions. So the faction that I talked to you about, Al Shabaab, is working in collaboration with the Houthis and the Iranians. Look for other groups in Somalia to be duped into going along and favoring the United States and Israel. So they
Hmm.
can undermine any type of development on the Horn in general, but specifically for this war that's going to expand. Trust me, that the MOU is dead. Israel was going to continue to uh, sabotage it. They've successfully done that, and now that it's just going to break out into more and more fighting, and it's
Hmm.
expanding within the region. It's going to be interesting to see what role Saudi Arabia plays now. What are they going to do?
Hmm. And he followed up, says Africa seems so easily thrown into civil wars. And unfortunately, that is a very sad tragedy. Um, just like I would say, Africans across in America seem to be so easily thrown into civil wars and
Mhm.
internecine violence, brothers killing brothers, etc. So one might ask, what factors allow brothers in Chicago, Memphis, New Orleans, etc., to so easily point their guns at each other as opposed to taking down any semblance or any representation of the oppression that we all suffer. And that's the same thing. We can just juxtapose that onto our motherland continent.
Yeah, or either Haiti or any of these places. Um,
That's right.
the thing is, we're so conditioned by the press to talk about civil war. Well, the situation in America that Keedy just mentioned, that's not a civil war. That's like he said, internecine violence. There's
Hmm.
no government that these folks or these factions are fighting over. They might fight over turf, quote unquote turf, or trafficking uh, privileges to traffic the drugs and the women and et cetera. But it's definitely not a government. We don't have agencies. Marcus Garvey had his African legions, and they would march. But I believe he was trying to implant the idea in our people that we need to have our own military, our own security. Of course, you have the Nation of Islam. They have security for their mosque, and some of them have branched out in some of these cities, and they provide security for events and things like that. And we had the deacons for defense and justice, but they don't exist anymore. We had the Black Panther Party that talked about providing security and surveillance on the police. We don't have any of that anymore. And even if we did, some of these young people and some of these folks are so crazy and so demented that would be another form of warfare. They would go up against the deacons of defense and justice or the FOI or whoever was trying to secure the community. 'Cause that's what happened when I was still working in the Richard Allen, there was a project in Philly called Richard Allen, some of the brothers came back from Vietnam and some of the other wars that the United States was fighting. This was during the drug in the 70s and 80s. They were coming back from some of these wars, and they were actually taking up defense positions in the projects to try to keep the drug dealers out and try to keep the residents uh, safe and secure. The druggies went after them and started shooting them. And so that just became one more
Mm,
thing of cannon fodder. And, because of the drugs and because of the lethargy and the lack of the masculine warrior spirit didn't support those brothers, they ended up abandoning the project and,
mm-hmm,
giving it to the drug dealers and the crazies.
mm-hmm. There's another question that came in, and bear with me here as I get the question up. From Sister 4, Africa 1 writes, why do you think there's so much interest in the death of Nolan Wells when so many Black people are murdered amidst community silence? Is there a turning point? Is this a turning point or a flash in the pan? And I, be honest with you, I was unaware of the death of Nolan Wells and the story. Have you been keeping up with that?
Not really, vaguely familiar with this young brother who went out on a trip or some boating outing with some white boys, and he turned up missing, and
Hmm.
they eventually found his body, but there's so many questions. He didn't have his phone, one of the white boys had the phone, they couldn't make contact with him, the parents are concerned, and now some of the parents one of the parents of the white boys is a judge. And so I'm sure she's moving to make sure that her son and those other white boys are protected and nobody casts aspersions on them. But again, people are a lot of controversy, the little bit that I've seen and followed up on it.
Hmm. Yeah, you know more about it than I do. I'm just looking at the story on Rolling Stone, and it does sound like he was most likely a victim of homicide, or it could have been that he drowned. But you say someone else having his cell phone. Nah, that doesn't add up at all.
Well, it was one of the
And
boys that had his cell phone.
hmm.
So we don't know. It might have been, the old white boys being boys and they might have pushed him into the water or something happened, but there's a lot of questions, a lot of unanswered questions.
And it may even have the potential of being another Emmett
Yeah,
Till.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, tensions are very high, and unfortunately, this kind of story keeps us as African people inside the United States constantly reacting, constantly emotional reaction position, and we don't seem to be able to get our grounding to engage in any long-term strategic actions or planning or whatever, even to protect our 18-year-old youth.
But see, again, we're not having we have bought into this notion, the illusion of inclusion, the delusion of inclusion, the whole
Hmm.
assimilationist mentality. And yes, I know there's a fatigue, a weariness in struggle. That's why during war, a lot of times they have to replace the people on the front lines to give them some what they call R&R
Hmm.
because of the stress and because of the fatigue. But we have seen in our sojourn and we've seen with our dealings with them throughout history, they're relentless. They don't care. They when we win, they go back to the drawing board and they come back with a vengeance. That's why they hate Haiti. That's why they hate
Hmm.
so many other black people and groups who have thwarted them or defeated them. Because in their mind, that's impossible. We shouldn't be able to do that. And my mind, it should be we should be routine. This we've done this.
Hmm.
I don't know how many times in antiquity. We kept them in check
That's right.
till we got lax. And so again, a couple of weeks ago, you talked about the feminization of our men,
Mm,
the disappearance of the warrior spirit. And I'm not saying uh, we should go out here and engaged in armed conflict with the community. What I am saying is that all communities have to have a defense mechanism. That's one of the things, one of the reasons why black people respected the Nation of Islam in the 50s and 60s, because they talked about protecting their women, and that resonated with us. That's why the Black Panthers caught the people's imagination, because these young people were out there talking about protecting the community. Where's that mentality now in our community in 2020?
hmm. That's right. That's so true. So we're moving forward. Let me see. Queen Mother Kashiba is in the house. She writes, too much malt liquor and weed is consumed in black neighborhoods. This malt liquor is not sold in white arenas, also tainted weed. And I did write about that, both of those issues. The book Rap, Hip Hop, and the New World Order, I wrote about it. And also in Population Wars, Culture Wars, I wrote about that in the 1990s, how the malt liquors are the the alcohol content of the malt liquors has been shown to
Yeah.
be destructive to our sperm DNA, the DNA in our sperm. And also, it's said to be destructive of the sperm count. Now, we've seen in the decades that followed, due to a number of factors, men's sperm count in the Western nations is now half of that of our grandfathers when they were our age, sperm count. So we're essentially seeing the maleness being eliminated from our population. Much of that has to do with the testosterone, and it's getting crazy. People better be paying attention to it. I don't see too many other authors writing about it or talking about fertility issues for males in our community.
Well, you don't see too many people. There was a time in Philly, they called them the stop and goes. They were the stores that sold the malt liquor and the beer and the cigarettes. But now that marijuana has been legalized for the most part, people have resigned just even fighting about it, even raising the issue about it as a public health issue. Because now they flip the script and say, okay, well, you take this if you have glaucoma, you take this if you have this. It's medicinal. Yes, it may be medicinal for some people, but from my perspective, it's part of the dumbing down and the zombification of our people.
Hmm.
You don't hear
Yeah.
anybody. They don't even have to put commercials. Before, they had commercials on the well, I don't listen to too much terrestrial radio anymore, but they used to have commercials on the radio and television about the various malt liquors. You don't even see that. They're so ingrained in the marketplace now, they don't even have to have they don't have to advertise.
Mm, mm. That's so true. A couple of comments have come in. Queen Mother Kashiba, she writes, Nolan was a good swimmer and his phone messages were deleted. Ben Crump is handling the case. This is Mississippi after all. And thank goodness for people like Ben Crump, who have been always been able to rely upon to maintain a frontline position on our civil rights issues, even though Ben Crump needs to be amplified, multiplied by
Yeah,
thousands.
yeah.
But we do really appreciate the brother. She writes, too much malt liquor and weed is consumed in black neighborhoods. This malt liquor is not sold in white areas, also tainted weed. And again, I did write about that. The contamination with anti fertility chemicals, endocrine disrupting chemicals in the weed back beginning in, oh, this would have been decades ago. It's been going on. And I don't encourage anyone to mess around with that stuff. Um, King Jason writes, a strong culture is the spearhead of protection. Culture is an offensive and defensive weapon. It's time we treat it as such. And I do encourage you, King Jason, get the book Game Theory for master's level study, and you will get much more insights into culture as the basis of our launching what we call the Ubuntu equilibrium. Is I contend Ubuntu equilibrium is applicable toward virtually all of the problems that African people face around the world. And if you can get the book, I'm going to put up a link to the book here in just a little bit. And also, I've been teaching the class. I'm thinking about dropping the class on Fridays, Bob Juniors, because ain't nobody showing up. I invite a lot of people. Most of them, I'm not even asking for any compensation for teaching the class, but they're not showing up.
Well, again, we're dealing with an anti-intellectual strain in our community. We're dealing with intellectual lethargy. There's a lot of despair. There's a lot of nihilism, and you would think that there would be a niche in the community that was curious and willing to dig a little deeper. I do think that there may be people who are interested, they just don't know about it. I do think that it takes a lot. I'm seeing a lot of this lethargy, this laziness in our various organizations where people don't want to do the work. They don't want to go the extra mile. I was talking to a young sister, and we were talking about an organization that we both belong to, and she said, "Well, people you want to be the leaders really should be retired so they have the time to run around and do this, and it's an alumni association. They need the time to run back and forth to the school and do this, but well, that's true because when I did it, I was retired. But
Hmm.
don't take it on if you don't have the energy, if you don't have the time, and you don't have the background or the skills or the competencies to do what needs to be done. You're talking about saving an HBCU. So, but that's just me. Again,
Hmm.
I tend to expect more of our people, given our history, given who we are. I expect the bar should be raised higher, that we should be striving to emulate the greatness of our ancestors that flows in our veins as we speak, as
Hmm.
we sit here and speak. And so sometimes it's very disappointing. That's one of the reasons why I no longer have as much resistance to the concept of fade to black as I did, say, 10 years ago, because of
Hmm.
the nihilism, because of the hopelessness, helplessness, because of the fact the Stockholm syndrome, because of the sellout mentality, because of this the demise of the African warrior, whether they're intellectual warriors or just brothers standing up, manning up in the family and the community. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, this does not bode well for us as a people.
No, you're absolutely right. Couple of comments. I did put up a link to the class. Did you know about game theory? And a link to the class and the book. Brother Mobera is in the house. Oh, King Jason
Hey,
had wrote, and Brother Mobera is in the house. He says, "Greetings. What class are you teaching on Fridays?" And you will see that in the commentary on your screen right now. King Jason had written, "I don't see as much malt liquor consumption as in the 90s. Oh, the super strong wheat. I read that." And he also, oh, I already read that already. Oh, no, I didn't. I don't see as much malt liquor consumption as in the 90s, but this super strong weed is insane. Walmart smells like a reggae fest. Laugh out loud. And yeah, the intensity of the weed, I can tell just by smelling it, even though I stopped participating, well over 2 decades ago, because of, becoming a father. And I didn't want that influence around the children. Um, but we this new level of weed out here, man, this stuff is really dangerous, Baba Junius. I
Mm.
grew natural weed, but it was very natural. It became really dangerous as it aged a couple of years. But this new stuff, it's to a whole new level. I don't encourage anybody to mess around with it.
Yeah, it's being laced with all kinds of additives that really are make it even more harmful, just like a lot of the other street drugs are being laced with fentanyl and some of these other additives, and they're part and parcel to a major project to take us out. But we just I guess I don't know because 'cause I've never been on that level of despair where I would wanna take drugs to get away from it all. I I believe I get high off of life, but I can empathize with many of our people who are in that situation because I had a lot of people in my family who are alcoholics. So I get
Mm,
but at the same time, there are lessons that need to be learned, and I think we need to go about learning the lessons because the as I said earlier, this does not bode well for us as a people.
hmm.
'Cause I've been
No.
to so-called family events or public events, and the lyrics on the music that's played, you smell the marijuana there. This is a family event. There are young children there, and so
Hmm.
they're growing up in those patterns. And we
Hmm.
talk about culture. For the most part, we're clueless about real culture, what culture really is,
Mm,
because we've allowed other people to hijack our culture, exploit it, and profit off of it, and turn it against us, which is the worst
hmm.
aspect of it all. They've turned our creativity against us.
Yeah. And can we do better than that? Yes, we can. But we've got to try. We got to set up some mechanism, some method of doing better. And unfortunately, on the macro level, I just don't see the political class of African people standing up to do that. Um, and so hence we're going to continue to suffer. I do see another comment. Stop the Madness writes, "You are right, and some just prefer to remain in Lola Lala land, no matter how much you invite open minded discussion." La La land. And unfortunately, that's where the gross percentage of our people who would be available to liberate ourselves, Ubuntu, unfortunately, they're remaining in that la la land. They're overwhelmed by Urugu society and the supremacy they see in all of that as promoted by Urugu. So we're going to keep trying. I'm going to keep mentioning the book Fade to Black. Maybe every time you and I mention it, one half of one person will begin to read the book. I wish it were the ratio where 10 people would read the book every time we mention it. It's a very important book, Papa Junius.
It's very significant and it's very, um, thought-provoking. You may not agree with it or you may totally agree with it, but you should familiarize yourself with the ideas that are contained in the book. Then look at not just in the abstract, but look in the mirror and say, okay, what am I doing that is promoting our own self-destruction, our own demise? And you don't have to be a gangbanger. You don't have to be a big time corporatist or somebody on a hedge fund or some elected official who sold us out. It could just be someone who does not speak up and stand out for what you know is right in a
That's right.
situation that is impacting you immediately.
Hmm. That's right. We're going to keep moving forward. We're about 10, 15 minutes before the top of the hour. And I'm going to do the best I can in the remaining time. And Baba Junius always does a good job of keeping us focused on solutions, calls to action. And one of the things about the book Game Theory, I'm sure you've noticed it, Baba Junius, at the end of every chapter, there are 8 specific calls to action that people can do. And I'm doing the best I can to make all of these calls to action as practical as possible.
Right. And then too, you have a summation of the chapter too, so that it helps people, because a lot of times you're taking in so much information and you don't get it all, and then you might see something in the summation. Say, "Oh yeah, okay, let me go back. I didn't see that. Let me go back."
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, the book is incredibly dense, very, very dense. It's not an easy read. We did talk about it this week on the Carl Nelson show, and Carl, for all of the guests that he has and all the books that they cover, Carl said this is not a simple book. If you're going to read this book, you have to take a lot of notes, write in the margins or whatever, use a highlighter. But he says it's an action workbook, and I was very proud to have presented this book. I think it's the most complex thing that I have ever written, but we're still doing the best we can to, give the people what the people need. The people need
Well,
power.
yeah, I think one of the things you might want to consider is having an accompanying workbook,
Mm,
introduction to game theory, because you're this book is master's level. So you're just like you're in college, this is like a 301 level course. And a lot of times the professors won't let you come in at a 301 level course unless you've had at least 101.
mm,
That's I agree, and I've been saying this all along. I agree with Carl Nelson. It's a scholarly book, and it should be approached in that way. You have to bring something to the table. Yes, you will get something out of it if you're totally unfamiliar with the concepts and what he's talking about, but it means you're going to have to do some supplemental and complementary work while you're reading the book. It is
mm-hmm,
very scholarly.
mm-hmm. Yeah, the idea of writing an introductory to the book. I thought I did that in the second chapter, but then
I'm
again,
not talking about an I'm talking about an entry level type book, because
mm-hmm,
this is very deep,
mm-hmm,
and people have to bring something to the table when they open it and read it, and they have to be willing to go back and reinforce what you've read, even
mm-hmm.
as you're moving forward on the book in the book.
Yeah, I can't disagree with what you're saying. Uh, I just am a little reluctant to write another book right now. I'm kind of out of my book writing moment. I go into it and out of it about once a year. And then when I go into the book writing phase, I'll knock out one, two, three, four, five, six, knock them all out. And right now I'm out of that modality, but we'll do the best we can to hook everybody up because I don't want to just leave this book stranded out there. This is
Well, I
too
think,
important a book.
what you might wanna do is during the week, and even just take 10 minutes every Sunday to take a topic, take an issue in the book, and break it down.
Hmm.
That may generate some more interest in it, but definitely clarify some things, and it's a form of, self-promotion.
Hmm. Well, I am doing that, but we can do that even better. We have on our Sundays, I think we've done a pretty good job of looking into ideas that are promoted in the book. And we're going to do better. Let's just say that. We are going to deliberately do better and better. A few more minutes at the top of the hour. Um, King Jason, I need use a workbook for your Google also. She recommends not reading the book without the workbook. So I seem to definitely agree with you, Bob Junius. Stoutness, I agree, but Brother Junius, you have to get people where they are. Well, maybe one of my listeners will write. One of my colleagues and friends and listeners took a class with the class was the stem cell activation course we taught last year, and
Yeah.
he
How
has
how
just
many how
released
many how many
his
how
book,
many things do
which
you have running
seems
at
to
the
be
same
just what
time?
you're talking about.
How many computers do you have running at the same time?
How many classes?
No, computers do you have running simultaneously while you're doing the show?
I'm running. I'm running one, two, three computers,
Yeah, because
and it's
sometimes I
choking
think
up right now.
yes, and some of it seems like it's feedback. You're getting an echo, and then sometimes it's like techno that
Oh, that's
techno.
not good.
But again,
Mm-hmm.
we do the
Uh,
best we can. You're a sole practitioner. It's rough. Like a lot of places, you you don't have an engineer like on a terrestrial radio station. You don't have an engineer helping you, or a producer, or a production assistant running around getting you stuff. It's all you're like a one arm paper hanger. So you just gotta just rumble, man. Just rumble.
yeah, I agree. We're going to do better. I think I've got it a little bit clearer right now. A couple of comments, and let's begin to wrap it up here, because I'm just kind of run out of energy. Stop. The madness is in the house. I agree with Brother Siddiqui Bakari. We need to be reprogrammed. That is the level most are on. Brother Mombera writes, in that vein, take a break from the serious stuff and write a cup of tawdry romance novels. uh, yeah,
I
funny,
miss his
funny.
wit,
Brother
and
Mombera is
I
got a
miss
great sense of humor.
yeah, I miss his wit, and I miss him coming on and contributing to the program. So, uh, looking forward to you coming back, brother.
Yeah. Well, I do continue to send him invitations to every. We definitely miss you, Brother Mombera. Well, I'm talking to you. You know what I'm saying. And one more comment. King Jason writes, Baba, Professor Jiang predicts the starvation of Africa by 2030. Does your game theory prediction say the same? No, my game theory prediction says just the opposite, is that Africa has enough resources, and this is the book I wrote, Blackest Soil. Africa can feed the world. And so if Africa can feed the world, I predict of 12.9 billion people just on its the bringing all of its lands into production. What's the word? What's the word? It's
You know,
accessible, not the
fertility
word.
and
All of its available resources into food and feed. Yeah. Um, it's accessible lands, fertile lands, or something. But if Africa brings all of its resources into production, feeding 6 people per acre, Africa has enough resources to feed to 12.9 billion people. The book is called The Blackest Soil. Came out in May 2020, the same time the COVID came out. Panic came out the same month. I wrote 2 books that were released in the same month. And I would say Mombera did write back. He says, I appreciate you, brothers. I really get lazy on Sundays. We'll get back on track and joining the forum. It'd be wonderful to have you with us, Brother Mumbera. You always were a very good contributor. And again, his sense of humor as well as sense of positive action always did show up. And I appreciate, love that about you, my dear brother. You are loved and you are appreciated by your global family. Let's get out of here as soon as we can,
Yeah,
Baba
the
Junius. We
other
got a
thing
couple
too
more minutes before we hit the top of the hour.
yeah, 2 things. I'll be away next week, so I won't be here next week. And I just wanna pass 2
Okay.
2 more pieces, 2 important pieces. Turkey issued an international arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu for interdicting humanitarian aid to Gaza, so that's significant. You're not
Mm.
gonna see that in the mainstream press. The other thing that I wanted to cover was, US property foreclosures up 30% from 2024. There have been 227,000 in the first 6 months of this year, and you can find that at Zero Hedge. So that's an indicator of some major issues. It's not just talking about people being in arrears. You're talking about foreclosures in the first half of this year,
Hmm.
227,000. So that's significant.
So, are those foreclosures going to lead to businesses failing?
No, this is property foreclosures.
Oh, property foreclosures. Oh, okay. So that's leading now to the corporations doing even more to control housing, more people thrown out of their residence, losing their home, and more Americans now going into the rental market.
Right. You will own nothing and be happy.
You will own nothing and be happy. That's very important. And I do see the article Turkey issues arrest warrant for Netanyahu over Samud flotilla crimes. And thank you, Turkey, for taking that responsibility. But getting a hold, bringing Netanyahu to justice is not going to be easy. South Africa, you see the effort that they put into it, and they were thwarted largely. So, and then the South African, the the Israeli Zionists are fighting back against South Africa covertly. So we have to pay attention to that. Um, Baba Junius, I think I got everything in today I wanted to talk about. You have anything else that did not
No,
get talked about yet?
we didn't talk about the re-escalation of the war, but that's an ongoing thing. Just keep an eye on it. Think about the
Hmm.
long-term impact of it, the economic long-term impact of it.
Yeah.
So with that, I'm done, and I'll see
Hmm.
you,
And of course, the news
2
from
weeks.
in the news from yesterday that a number of U.S. soldiers were killed, and of course, Donald Trump retaliating against that, the killings of U.S. soldiers. I mean, they're killing Iranians every day in huge, huge numbers, and then they take the lives of Westerners considered to be more precious than the
Mhm.
Africans.
Yeah.
And to me, if they're deliberately bombing civilian infrastructure, they're bombing power plants, water desalination plants, they're bombing bridges. To me, that sounds like crimes against humanity, Bob Jones.
Those are war crimes, but no one is gonna challenge the
Hmm.
United States because in that United States I mean, the International Criminal Court is corrupt anyway. They only usually go after, 3rd, Southern Hemisphere countries. But the thing is, the the press is weak. They're cowards. They don't raise those issues. But karma is always in action. So the result is gonna be, in my view, the collapse of the American empire.
Yeah, and it is happening in real time. We're going to do the best we can to move forward. And Baba Jones, thank you very much for your participation. Always you bring value to the show. To my brother Mombera, perhaps next week you will not be so exhausted or lazy as you say, and you will join me. Otherwise, I have done the mastermind alone, but it's very painful for me to do so. And I don't take that Sunday. I don't take Sundays off. I'm doing the best I can to be so consistent. But with you and Dewara both going to be gone next week, hopefully we'll have someone step up into your position. You got big shoes to fill, Baba Juniors.
Well, you can do it because we can't get into that cult of personality, the cult of one. I maintain there's many more warriors out here.
That's right. There are many
Hey,
warriors out here.
ask Queen Kashiba if she would come on. I mean, because she offers so much information that she would be a good participant, active
Mhm.
participant, other than just watching and commenting.
All right, I will send her a message offering her and to come on to LIB Radio. And I was thinking about maybe asking a few of our callers or our regular contributors to the program. I could send them each an invitation. King Jason could send him and Guvu, Mumbera, Stop the Madness. I see you all, and we acknowledge you. I am because we are for Africa One. She's very well informed. She and I, we do communicate quite a bit on the WhatsApp. So let's just see if we can get some other people to stand up and allow their voices to be shared, their thoughts to be shared on your favorite and my favorite. We are LIB Radio, LIB TV, and livinginblack.com. We say thank you to each and every one of you for participating today. I am because we are. And on that note, let's wrap it up, Baba.
All right. Well, I'm out of here. Everybody be safe and stay strong.
Peace and
Free your
prosperity to
mind.
you
The
guys.
rest will follow.
Aha, great advice. We do appreciate appreciate that as well. Thank you, Baba Juniors, for all you do for all of us. We are so incredibly grateful. And on that note, I'm going to hit the bumper music and take us on out of here. And we're going to just stream as we go out. And we usually go out, we stream some book covers because it is selling the books, writing the books that I am supported here. We are supported at LIB Radio. The books have been the main source of our income over the years. And on that note, we're out. Peace and prosperity to each and every one of you on LIB Radio, LIB TV, and on livingintheblack.com. Peace, y'all.